And now I'm going to turn it over to these three wonderful women, and I am going to step aside and keep them letting people in. And I don't know which one of you was starting, but go ahead.
I'll take that ball and go with it. So I'm
Thank
I'm
you,
starting
Amy.
off. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amy Price, and I get to welcome all of you to our session here. We're going to be doing intros in a little bit, but we're going to start in a bit of a different way. But as we get started here, I want to invite anyone who's on here just to maybe share your name. I mean, we can see most of your names there, and then maybe where you are calling in from, just to get a sense of who's in the room, or maybe just a sentence in the chat also about what excited you to join our session if there was something that called to you. So I invite you to share that in the chat just so we know who's with us without taking up too much time going around. So, but really thank you for being here. Just like Suzanne shared in her welcome, we know that this is not the easiest of topics to tackle. And I'm really grateful for my friends Jana and Joanna who said yes to this invitation to join me. And as we were talking, the three of us realized that the three of us approach this in three different ways that we are able to frame as the head, hand, and heart. And so, maybe we should have played a game beforehand to like guess who was which one in this, but they don't know us. But and so each of us are going to frame our conversation in terms of the hands, the head, and the heart. And also, it's also an invitation for everyone who's on here to think, what is your maybe which of those three you most relate to in this work. And maybe there's a way that you want to jump into one of the other ways of looking at it. And so we're going to be framing it in that way. So we're going to start our time together with Jana is going to do a kind of a grounding and meditation with all of us. And then Joanna will kind of frame a question for all of us. And then the three of us will do our introduction and answer that question. And then we'll open it up more for a conversation for everyone on here, even to share what it brings up for you or which way that you most identify with. And our hope, and this is you leave with a sense of how do you connect to this topic. And also there are ways that you want to lean into different ways of engaging with this topic in a way. So again, thank you so much for being here. And we hope that you find some connection and meaning out of what we're going to bring to you today. So I'm going to now toss the ball over to Jana.
I'm catching it over here. Hi, everyone. I'm Jana Diamond. I'm glad to be with you today. I also know, we'll just reiterate that it can be, first of all, just like honoring everyone's courage for saying yes to showing up in all the ways, wherever you are, whatever you're bringing in, however you're feeling, however you're doing. All is welcome. And, while we take another step, opening the door into the land of climate emotions, which tend to be wrapped up in a little kind of cluster when we say climate anxiety, we might pull some of that apart today a little bit to get a little bit more space, just to really honor that this is a sensitive area, and there's, I'm going to name my own vulnerability as I step in to hold and invite us on a bit of a journey together today. And we're just going to, take a little, dip a toe in. This isn't about diving into the deep end. This is just about what is it that we are feeling in these human bodies in these precarious days. And when we start to feel things, and I'll share a little bit more, later on my own story and how I got here and what I do, but I want to name that when we work with the body, which is where emotions get stored and held, things tend to concentrate in our mid-center section. So I want to invite us into a bit of a practice to arrive, to ground. Again, everything's an invitation, everything's a practice. If if you're curious about trying something with me, it's going to be very subtle and light, but again, like whatever feels good for you, I invite you to join. So we're going to take a moment here just to maybe adjust in your seat in a way that might be a little bit more comfortable. Maybe you can notice that you are on a seat, that you're on a chair, that there may be a stable surface underneath you, a stable surface that your chair is resting on. And then if it's available, we're gonna hopefully start with something fun, which is beginning to circle your wrists and your ankles, right? Maybe it's like all four at once. You can go at any speed. We're just noticing like, oh my goodness, we have limbs. I'm gonna snap, crackle, pop over here. Maybe you can, you might be doing some too. So this is available, right? This actually helps us to expand our internal container so that our bodies can hold still maybe a little bit more of who we are and what we're bringing. And so we're circling the wrists, the ankles, in any direction. You might want to switch. Yep, and then we can go ahead and let the arms rest, and then maybe see how it feels to just tap your feet on the ground, maybe alternating in some way. And you may notice, yeah, I'm noticing some yawns. That's actually really good. That means the body is starting to settle and arrive. And tapping your feet. And then you can also like rub your feet on the ground, right? Anything that reminds you that, hey, we are connected to the earth right underneath us, right? This helps our bodies connect literally to the ground, a grounding practice. Okay, and then you can let the feet rest. And now we're gonna go back to the hands one more time. And we're gonna just rub the hands together, creating a little bit of friction here, some warmth. Maybe go a little bit faster. And then you can let that go ahead and pause. And if it feels comfortable for you, go ahead and place your hands, maybe even one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly. It can be on directly making contact. It can be a couple inches away. Yeah, we're just gonna take a moment here to notice that contact. And seeing if there's any sensations that you're aware of. Could be warmth, could be tingling. Right, we're inviting more of us into the conversation. We're inviting some more space and even some integration. You can take another breath here. And when you're ready, you can let that all settle and soften. And I'm gonna pass it over to Joanna.
I will catch the ball now. Good afternoon. I am Joanna Kobylivker, I am the director of the Adama ATL, which is Atlanta Hub. And it seems weird talking about anxiety now. I feel so calm. Thanks, Jana. But the three of us, myself, Amy, and Jana, I think we're peers, we're colleagues, we're friends. We all feel tremendous weight on our shoulders when we think of the climate and when we think of the role of the Jewish community. And we do come at it from different places and different experiences. And so the theme that Amy introduced, the hands, the head, the heart, that kind of answers the three places we each come from. So I'll just offer kind of my background, and then I'm gonna ask us a question, and I'll try to put it in the chat, and we'll go around and answer that question. But I come from this work without a background in farming, climate science, anything. I really come at this really from my head. I just feel like people just need answers. They need guidance. They need people to help them see that this is not that hard to do, that this is totally logical and rational, that we should be doing more, doing better. And so I think I come at this, I'm also a middle child. So I think, why can't we all just get along? It's not that hard. Let's all be friends. But wait, let's do it in a rational way. So that is kind of my approach. And so the question that we want to ask everyone is, how does climate anxiety show up in your life or work? And how do you navigate it in your day-to-day? And you can think about that in terms of, you could just sort of think how you would answer that. You can also think of it in the context of your head, your hand, your heart. So, I tend to lean into trying to use give people facts, direct people to solutions. These are practical climate solutions that you can use in your home, in your synagogue. And I'm beginning to get more comfortable with using my hands. Amy's really taught me a lot about planting, and getting there. And really just the heart. I mean, it's hard to really differentiate between where the heart begins and the head begins. And I think they really do come together. I think I'm guided by my heart for really wanting to see goodness, justice, beauty, and preservation in this world. I think, though, as far as how does the anxiety show up and what do, I tend to my comfort level is relying on facts, science, and solutions. So really driving people that this is doable work. This doesn't have to be overwhelming. It feels like it is, and it is, but you start, one foot in front of the other. And that is how I come to this work. And I guess, shall I call on my co-presenters to reveal their, you can probably guess since I gave it away.
I'll take it up from there. So when I was going to move into my now husband's house, and we decided, I told him I was not willing to move in unless we had a garden bed and a chicken coop. I felt that that was something really important to me. If you were to drive down my street right now, you would immediately tell which one is my house. There is no more grass in our yard. Our front yard is full of pollinator plants. And even this afternoon, when I was between sessions, I was like, oh, I've been on the computer all day and I needed to go plant some tomatoes and eggplant just to kind of separate. I'm also a beekeeper, and that's been one of my greatest ways of being able to see the effects of climate change. I can tell when my bees have died from the effects of it. So varroa mites, which the Latin name is Varroa destructor, they have become a challenge to honeybees because of our changing climates. When I first started beekeeping, it wasn't something that we had to, but they are destroying our honeybee populations. And there's so many ways that we can see within our pollinator, important pollinators and things, the ways that this is happening. And so for me, really engaging with the land, using my hands, planting, is really the ways that I've been able to, and I feel it's important to show that there's ways that we can treat our land in a way that's good for everyone. So I've shared my name is Amy Price. I am I work on programming with Joanna, and I also have my hands in a lot of other things. I do a lot of bee presentations and teaching people how to engage with the land, and love the opportunity to engage with youth around really there's opportunities for them to engage in ways. Was a Teba educator, farmed in Rwanda, and have done a lot of things that have really brought me to this. And so for me, when I'm really feeling it, going out and just planting one plant or supporting the growth of pollinator plants really is the way that I look at supporting our environment and thinking more deeply about this work. So, Jana.
Guess what I get to hold here? Um, Thank you both. I'm realizing also as I'm hearing you, I mean, how much, right, the learning can come in cognitively and then move through us. And then, of course, like the tactile, physical pieces, right? Like besides being a body-oriented therapist and working one-on-one with people and being in the field of climate psychology, I'm also an artist and get to make things by hand. I'm like, oh, if I didn't get to make things by hand, I don't know that I could do the work that I do in the heart. So I want to name that as something that, we start to see a little bit more of as, we open up these different areas and entry points. So, I like to think I work from the heart, and, a heart-centered being, which is, I always am like, is that in service? Is that coming from my heart? Where is that coming from? How am I moving? How am I acting? So many questions. But, I think about some of the origins of our predicament and the, precarious moment that we find ourselves in. And for me, it often comes down to a sense of separation, right? Separation from land, separation from self, from body, sometimes the split between the head and the heart, literally, right? Where we aren't just these cognitive, rational, although that's a huge part of who we are, right? We're not just these cognitive beings. We also are these embodied whole beings that have hands, that have feet, that, get to move around the world and move around our days. And when we experience, it's interesting. It's like there are cultural and social patterns that have created more and more separation than we might say, and almost layers of protection that have formed from past hurts, whether in our own life, whether, some things that we're carrying ancestrally, that can create layers of protection over our hearts that may ask us to slow down and to begin to kind of notice and peel and, tend to what has kind of protected us from feeling more. And so in so much of, my work, my life, I feel like I've spent the last 2 decades being like, okay, I'm like such a sensitive person. I feel so much. What do I do with this? How do I support others to also navigate and like love on their hearts, really is essentially what we're doing, because we are designed to feel. Like, feelings are a part of our aliveness. It's a sign of our aliveness. Like, and yet, in many ways, we're not taught how to let the emotions move through us so that they can act as this alchemical process that leads us towards having more space, more connection, more ways and abilities, or ways really to respond to the moment. And so it's like, there's so many different pathways here, right? It's like, we transmute through the heart. We get to feel, we get to engage, we get to for many of us who study and talk a lot about grief, I mean, I just want to name that grief is love. Many of you might know this. It's like we grieve what we love. And again, I think this all comes down to how much many of us, whether conscious or not, love this life, love being alive, love being, a part of this incredible, magnificent earth. And from there, like, right, like there's like such a longing. We're gonna do whatever we can to protect, to feel, to engage. And so I might be speaking in a little bit more like general macro levels here, but yeah, like tending to the grief and our love for this life is such a huge part of being alive, and being with where we are and being with each other in these really critical days and moments. So I know I could go on, but what I'm curious too, right? Like, if it's okay, if I might ask, and just let this be a little bit of a transition moment, and then I'll pass it back to my dear friends here, is like, what from anything that the three of us shared, like, what do you relate to? What resonates for you? Is there an entry point that feel most connected to, from these kind of three lanes that we clearly know are not so separate?
And you can feel free to unmute yourself and share, or if you feel more comfortable writing into the chat, that's also an invitation.
Okay, Leora, go ahead.
Sure. Was that a South African accent? I love it. So I'm Leora, and I'll just share one thing. So by profession, I'm a consultant. I do strategic planning. It's very sort of action oriented in many ways. It's, how do we prioritize? How are we going to, bring to life? Sorry, there's an airplane overhead. It's work plans, it's who's responsible, it's how do we put budget and align resources, et cetera. It's very action oriented. And I kind of brought that same approach when I started a sustainability task force at my synagogue that gendered a lot of interest. A lot of people have been involved and wanting to do more. And we put together our work plans and our goals, and we got budget approved from the board. And we, we've started upgrading HVACs and, thermostats and all of that. And then I have to say, I took a step back, and this is what the part that resonated with me. And that was also just kind of enjoying our natural world and appreciating it. And this year we've done more things, like we just had a bird watching event where we walked through a park to do watch a bird migration. We're going to, we have a gym in our city, Museum or the Academy of Natural Sciences. We're getting a tour of their archives and just starting to like take a step back from so much doing and having more of this appreciation for kind of the why. And that a few different things that were said kind of resonated with me. Thank you.
Myrtle, did you want to jump in? Oh, Robert?
Yeah, but Shayna said she has to leave in a few minutes. So does Shayna want to talk now?
Oh, Robert?
Yeah, I'm going to need to leave in a couple minutes, so let me jump in. I'm a retired psychologist, retired about 4 years ago, kind of prior to COVID and before all of this climate thing has really reached the point that it's reached. And so anxiety is certainly understandable, but I guess I resonated most to what you said about loving life and realizing at this point that we're all we're so rewarded. You know, we've had such a good life by being able to consume and live with such privilege, but it's unsustainable. And that's the really, it's like what Al Gore called the inconvenient truth. It's just so unfortunate because, you know, it's wonderful to get in your car and go to the restaurant and eat a bunch of food from all over the world and, you know, just consume. But it's all now about saying, wow, we've kind of overdone it. And we have to really all agree that we have to pull back and we have to find technologies that allow us to continue to live well, but with less. So I'm all about just being part of that change. And I think it's something all of us hopefully will buy into and be part of.
Thank you.
Okay, let me pick up. I think my viewpoint is somewhat different. I feel that I'm in a race against time. I'm in a race against time, not solely because the planet is in a race against time, but because my body and my capabilities and my brain are also in a race against time. And Jan and Amy and Joanna all know me because I'm also in Atlanta. But I think this is a huge contributor to my climate grief, that I just get overwhelmed. I want things to happen. I want things to happen with other people who are 50 years younger than me. I want to be able to see the things that I've tried over the last 20 years actually have an imprint that will outlast me. And I think it makes me a very unhappy and depressed person to be around and not very good company. So I have to work at that. I have to work at kind of, you know, putting all this aside and trying to pretend to be kind of normal when I'm interacting with people. And that's also difficult. But I also find that, I mean, among the many things I do, I sometimes plant things at the synagogue with the preschool kids. And when these little kids come up with their little hands and they find an earthworm and they, Miss Myrtle, I found this, Miss Myrtle, this. I mean, this kind of thing is very, very exciting. And yeah, it kind of redeems the depression that I feel at other times. So with that, Bertie.
Bob, you want to go ahead and go?
Yeah, it's great to hear what you just said, Myrtle. I share many of those reactions. I think that I don't feel anxiety in the classic sense, but I feel kind of a soft, wistful disappointment. I am well aware that a certain set of actions, having been taken 40 years ago and some others 30 years ago and some others 10 years ago, etc., would allow us to have an uncomfortable but tolerable transition. And for lots of reasons, there are always other concerns for business people, for political leaders. And so I completely like I still believe that we can make it not terrible for our children and grandchildren, but we can't make it comfortable unless there's some kind of miracle. So I'm sad about that. And it comes out in reaction to current events. In our synagogue, there are about 5 hardcore environmentalists, and there's about 30 somewhat interested. And we've gotten huge things done. But every time there's another issue, whether it's attacks against synagogues in the United States or conflicts, violent conflicts in the Middle East, everybody's attention goes there, and therefore we're going much slower. So I also want to talk to what Leora said in your consultant hat. I'm exactly in the same place. I'm about impact at scale. For me, of course, I'd like to feel good about what me and my wife are doing, and we are doing a great deal. But to really prevent, extreme weather and many other dislocations by 2050, it's not going to be about what we do in our little household. It's not even going to be about the 200 families who know us well, who say, that's a good idea. We could do what Emily and Bob did. So I don't know what to do with that. Like you said, Myrtle, I realized rehearsing this at my friends and synagogue members is not helpful. So I tend to just be quiet and then look for opportunities to share encouraging things that I know about. And there are a lot of them, but they don't meet scale, according to me. So DBRT.
Thanks, Bob Shamati. I just want to honor also naming the sadness. I often will kind of speak about a sorrow song that I sense in the background. I don't know if that resonates for folks, but right, we can go through a lot of different things, and sometimes different emotions come out in different ways when you're not exactly expecting it. Does anyone else want to share in response? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all. What a great session. I don't know if this is a helpful frame, but in Musar, we have this idea of balancing every attribute and its opposite. And as a partial assuaging of climate anxiety so that we can channel it into climate action rather than throwing up our hands. A great example of that is between zeal and patience, right? So there are times, this is really inspired by Bob and others, there are times when we need to focus on the zeal and the fierce urgency of now, but that doesn't mean that playing the long game isn't also important, right? Even as there are times that we need to summon all the patience that we have and play that long game while looking for whatever quick wins we can for the climate and others. So this creative tension hopefully gives us a little permission not to feel like we're stuck in one place all the time or are always, somehow missing the mark. We're just constantly readjusting.
Becky, I think you're on mute. I think you're, but I know what you were saying was very profound, so it's all.
It was very profound. I'm sorry you missed it. Since Fred brought up Musar, I wanted to share too. I recently did a Musar class for climate activists, and one of the most hard-hitting sessions for me was the one on Simcha, on joy. And the conversation came up about, is it okay to enjoy unseasonably warm weather? And there was a sense in the room of like guilt and like anxiety around like, oh, it's so nice, but it shouldn't be this warm. And someone just simply said, you enjoying a warm day will not worsen the climate crisis. And And so I'm trying to transpose that into the anxiety as well. And I think for those of us who are really invested, I think I'll speak for myself at least. There's a sense of like anxiety is kind of what fills my tank and keeps me going. And but that's I know that's not true. Like I will stick to this work regardless of, you know, and this the way that I live, regardless of like what emotions are driving me. And if I can learn that feeling anxious isn't helping the climate crisis at all, that there's nothing that my anxiety is doing that's going to reduce emissions, or that it's like, oh, I'm not going to go to, I have a climate related job. I'm not going to say, oh, I don't feel anxious today. I'm not going to go to work. Like, you know, like I don't feel anxious today. So I'm going to turn the thermostat up. Like my behavior, I'm in it. And so I'm trying to just release it for the sheer, just similar, like there's this great saying, like worry is like a rocking chair. It keeps you busy, but it doesn't get you anywhere. Like, am I using like anxiety in that same way? Like it makes me maybe feel like I'm doing something or contributing in some way, but it's not, and it's just not necessary. So I'm trying to like embrace more of the joy and less of the anxiety, grounded in some of that stuff. So yeah, thanks.
I'm really appreciating what I'm hearing all of you, everyone here saying, and really such gratitude for sharing so deeply about where you're at and what's resonating with you. I mean, there's so many pieces, little nuggets that I'm like, yes, yes, yes. That's I think some of the things that I'm sitting with right now in relation to this head, hands, and hearts. We know that there's a lot of different ways that we approach this work, and there's sometimes it feels in that grief and anxiety, you know, judgment on others, like why aren't they doing enough? Or at my synagogue, they just don't get it, or all these pieces. But I think this has been such a helpful framework for me to say, well, sometimes we have different ways of approaching it, and how can we find common ground with and collaborate on and have awareness of what is your way of approaching it. I think in Joanna and myself, even in our work together in collaboration, have come to a place of just knowing that our ways of approaching it are very different, but are still the ways that our hearts yearn for something different is real helpful. And so this was another way that it really helped me see that, just the ways that how can you find commonality or a place that we can come together around this and not create more division and frustration and anger. And I know that sometimes I go there, why aren't they doing more? What's going on? How can my next door neighbor be spraying pesticides all over their yard? How do they? But what is the conversation that can bring us together and create collaboration and support, knowing that we have lots of different ways or even different knowledge about where we're at and what we can do.
Shayna Morel, I'm going to invite you if you wanted to very briefly talk about a program that is very relevant to what we're talking about.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me in, and sorry for having my camera off. Needed a little bit of an eye break for some self-care. So I work for Adaman campus manager, so overseeing our college campus program. And Adama beautifully received a prestigious and overwhelmingly generous grant from the Covenant Foundation to launch an initiative called Shamati. I've heard a lot of people here today say Shamati and Dibarti, which means I have listened, I have heard, and Dibarti, I have spoken. And so for the Shamati initiative, we are going to be working over the next 3 years with those who work with youth. So camp counselors, day school teachers, everyone in between, to support them in supporting the youth that they work with on climate anxiety and navigating those emotions. So more information is coming out about that soon, but I wanted to just name that for all of you, that this is really important to us at Adama, and we're starting to build in programming and content to really meet this moment and meet this need. And I'm hopeful that this will be brought to some of the areas that you all are working in.
Thank you, Shayna. Any others want to add any thoughts or feelings? no shortage of them, as we know. And we do want to have a little bit of joy in this session as well. So, Jana, if you want to bring some sunshine.
Well, I think, we're pulling in some of the threads here, and Becky, you offered us such a beautiful transition earlier as well to inviting in more joy. And actually, Shayna, thank you for sharing, because it is like the vision and creation of youth, and like supporting more and more people, right, to navigate their climate anxiety, to take action, and to be in community around it all. So with that, probably not a surprise that we want to say, what else is bringing you joy right now? Right? It wouldn't be a complete climate anxiety session if we didn't loop all the way back around and create a little bit of a circle, and even like a spiral, to lift us back up and out, because that joy is vital to everything. So if anyone wants to share, you can share in the chat. You can also unmute and even popcorn here, like one thing, something. I mean, I'm really feeling some joy in being with all of you right now. I know, yes, I just said that. But if anything, yeah, you want to share, Becky?
Yeah, let
I
me be a
think
little bit more cheerful. I mean, I think spring this year in the Southeast has been extraordinary. It may be because we had more rains than we might normally have in winter. It may be because the winter was slightly warmer. But every day there are different blossoms. It's this, and then it's that, and then it's pink, and then it's yellow, and then it's white, and then it's the daffodils, and then it's the viburnum bushes. It doesn't matter what it is. And then there's always the green at the background, and we have to remember that the green is what's going to stay there through the summer. The blossoms are going to come and go, but the green is going to be there, and it's the green that's doing the hard work for us.
About 6 years ago, I was on a committee that was of citizens of my town, Lafayette, Colorado, that were helping the city develop a sustainability plan. And at that time, I flagged for the consultants that the city had hired that the word climate and climate change were nowhere in the plan. And that was, and then actually someone in the room was like, well, we can't put that in there because it's divisive in this, and I was like, are we really having this conversation? Is this what's really happening? And here's what makes me happy is within the last 6 months, the sustainability plan got renamed a climate action plan. So in the 6 years from the word climate not even being in the plan to now being the name of the plan. And tonight there's like an open session for citizens to go in and look at the plan and weigh in on it. So I'm planning on going to that, but to just see that that kind of progress in such an explicit way in my city brings me great joy.
I'm going to say that my great joy is Passover coming up, to be able to spend it with my children and grandparents, my in-laws. Their grandparents who are 97 and 94, and we're going to have 30 people together. And I think that to me is a joy for the holiday, to spend the holidays of spring together. So that's mine.
I get to look out right now into my front yard. There's a window right here, and the the butterflies and the bees dancing on the flowers and enjoying the nectar is bringing me some great joy.
Maybe one more, if anyone else feels, and thank you for everyone putting all your beautiful joys in the chat. We are reading and acknowledging them. Anyone else want to bring their voice in before we begin to wrap up? so much joy.
So we pose this question to everyone: how does climate anxiety show up in your life and work, and how do you navigate it in your day to day? And even that question in itself can be, that anxiety provoking and bring in the joy. And our hope in this session is just to support some reflecting on that, and an invitation to think about how does that manifest itself for you, and maybe finding different ways to that you can, or doing different things can help support you during this time.
So I want to jump in here and thank you all for, unless anybody else has anything to add before I jump, thank you all for participating in this session. There are a few more sessions today and all afternoon tomorrow. We hope that you would join. Even if you haven't signed up for it, you could still sign up for them. And on behalf of LIMU North America, I want to thank the three of you and everybody that has participated in this session. And hopefully this session has brought lots of joy, to use your words, into as we approach the holiday. Everybody have a wonderful Pesach, and thank you all for participating.